What do you think about holding for 5 minutes to see
We
if
can
anybody
hold for
comes?
5 minutes, yeah.
Is that okay with you, Donovan?
All right,
Okay.
good.
Thanks.
Yep, good by me.
Okay.
That's good.
Beautiful sunshine today. Wow. Are you getting sunshine in Toronto?
Not right now.
Yeah, no, it's like real windy because of the temperature change, of course. But yeah, no, today was a really nice day.
That's good.
Oh, that's good.
But as my
That-
father reminds me, it ain't gonna last long.
Yep.
I will enjoy it while it's here.
Yeah, I have a bunch of family in Toronto.
Mhm,
I can't wait to get back to see them and meet my third cousin's new girlfriend, stuff like that, right?
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. I come from London.
Okay. Yeah. In the area.
Yep. Yep.
I'm gonna peek and see who else here.
You can just move that over.
I can't.
Yeah, see that double line there? Yeah. There you go.
Here's Renan
Hey, Renan.
and Wanda.
Yeah, excellent. Get the honey. We have 4 hummingbird feeders, and we have seen some action out here. Oh my. Because every day the sun comes around just a little bit earlier. They're really enjoying it. Okay, you want to move that back, please? There we go. Sweet.
Okay.
We're good to go.
Welcome, everybody. I think everybody knows that I'm Barbara, and we have a guest today, Donovan Hayden, and our usual tech person, Heather, on the all the equipment. Welcome to the Comox Valley Fellowship. We welcome you, whoever you are, whatever your age, race, faith, or philosophy, whatever your background, identity, or orientation. You are welcome here. Joy, would you like to read the land acknowledgement?
For thousands of years, Indigenous people occupied the shoreline of eastern Vancouver Island in a place referred to as the Land of Plenty. We would like to acknowledge that we meet here today on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation.
Carolyn.
May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Hi. We're going to start today with joys and concerns so that we can spend uninterrupted time with Donovan. We wondered if anyone would like to share a joy or concern, briefly say it, and I will acknowledge it by putting a stone into the communal water, and So I invite you to begin.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll start off. I just have a couple of concerns, as I mentioned.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way.
This reading is called, excuse me, this reading is called the Call of Our Faith by Takia Nur Amin. Takia Nur Amin is a dance scholar, educator, and consultant. She's a member of Black Lives of UU, Blue, Organizing Collective Board.
In every moment, life is giving us an invitation. I really believe that. I really believe that in every moment, life is giving us an invitation to do the things that are the most loving and life-affirming, and that doing the loving and life-affirming thing is always the answer when you don't know what to do, or if you're feeling unsure.
There's always a moment of invitation to rethink or reevaluate. We're being invited into this cosmic dance of renewal and joy and justice. But you have to make the justice. It doesn't always show up without participation or our effort. Things don't get better just by us waiting for them to happen. We all have to engage in the better making from wherever we are. And each moment presents an invitation for us to do that.
I don't want us to forget that. Even if, like me, you're feeling tired or frustrated or unsure, the invitation to participate in a manner that is about living our values, living love and justice, is still there no matter what else is going on.
Ask yourself, what's the most loving, life-affirming thing that I can do in this moment for myself or for other people? Sometimes it's get some rest. Sometimes it's apologize for something you've done. Sometimes it's reconsider how you're using your money or other resources in the broader world.
To me, if we're talking about racial justice, love is about acknowledging that there has been wrong, that there has been harm perpetrated, and that whether you personally feel like you participated in it or not, you are likely benefiting from the inequitable results of that harm.
That is a part of the call, the mandate of what it is to be Unitarian Universalist, to figure out how we live together in loving, equitable, just relationship with each other.
I believe that the proof of our faith is the extent to which we do that. The proof of our faith is not in some confession that we make. The proof of our faith is not in some words that we say. The essence of our endeavor, the proof of what we believe, is in how we do the work of bringing about love, justice, and community.
We are pleased and privileged to welcome back Donovan Hayden.
Donovan Hayden is a Black activist and artist. Last year, he finished an MA in Theater and Performance Studies at York University in Toronto. He is an organizer for the political nonprofit Progress Toronto. Donovan has had the opportunity to engage with Unitarians and anti-racism work in both Canada and the US. He blends activism and art for the goal of liberation and the dismantling of white supremacy. Welcome back, Donovan. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it is great to be back. Good afternoon to all of you. For me, it's a good evening. I used to be a member at the EMC Greater Fellowship. That stood for Easter, Mother's Day, and Christmas, as those were the only days I attended church. As the son of a minister, it may be surprising that during my teen years, I stopped identifying myself as a Unitarian. Along with the rare service, I attended UU summer camps, but even my participation in those began to fade. Besides my parents, I had no real investment in being a UU and did not consider it my community. It was not until the summer of 2020, after roughly 5 years disconnected from Unitarians, that I began to attend church services and reconnect with the faith. After hearing about my involvement in protests after George Floyd's murder, the interim minister at First Pittsburgh, Reverend Connie Grant, invited me to speak on my experiences at the protests. I had spoken at UU churches before, but always by invitation of my parents. I had never been sought out for my own work before. It felt good. I accepted and gave my first version of anti-racism as spiritual practice in July 2020. Little did I know that I would go on to give that sermon 22 more times at congregations across Canada and the United States, including this one at Comox. I had not attended that many church services since I was 10 years old. As I spoke, I researched more about UU's commitment to anti-racism and, of course, the eighth principle. It is because of this engagement with social justice, anti-racism, and the valuing of Black people that I was brought back into the faith and proudly call myself a Unitarian Universalist today. I was excited about the eighth principle and for the CUC to adopt it at the special meeting on November 27th. After 2 difficult hours, the 8th principle was passed with 95% of the delegates. However, I did not feel the joy that I had expected. When I connected with other racialized UUs after the meeting, they also expressed feeling wary and weary. The first hindrance to our joy is that we saw how the sausage got made. We put in long hours of work that required deep patience and exposed us to challenging situations at every turn. Secondly, we know there is a lot of work ahead. After the vote passed, we seem to all be in agreement. Today we celebrate, tomorrow we work. This time, the work does not fall solely on racialized people. Now that the CUC and congregations have adopted the 8th principle, it calls all Unitarians to individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and systemic barriers to full inclusion in ourselves and our institutions. It is time to put the 8th principle into action by shifting our priority from diversity to anti-racism, cultivating external relationships, and reckoning with the internal racism exposed over the last few years. Diversity to anti-racism. Like many liberal spaces, UU congregations are focused on diversity. A common question I got after my talk was, how do we attract more Black and racialized people? Often paired with, our congregation is predominantly old and white. What can we do about that? I appreciate this question and recognize the difficulty many congregations face when trying to be diverse. The reality is that our congregations are predominantly white, and most, like Comox, are situated in predominantly white communities. It's important that we seek efforts to diversify our churches, but it is an almost impossible task for many congregations. To use the old idiom, you cannot get water from a stone. Even when diversity initiatives are done successfully, they do not equate to anti-racist work. What good is seeking diversity if we do not support racialized folks and instead expose them to racism that has remained dormant in our congregations, which inevitably makes them leave anyway? I believe Canadian UU congregations could better use their resources to prioritize being anti-racist. This does not mean that we ignore diversity, but recognize that with or without racialized people present, we should be doing the work to dismantle racism in the larger community. We can start by educating ourselves on anti-racism. I suggest reading Black anti-racist authors and the resources developed by the CUC. Recognize and research key terms and concepts like defund the police, land back, and racial gaslighting on the back end so that you are ready to do the work on the front end. In 2015, white anti-racism activist Chris Krass made this observation at the UUA General Assembly. Quote, "The question for us as Unitarian Universalists is not how many people of color we can get in our pews, it's how much damage we can do to white supremacy." End quote. White supremacy was created by and is sustained by white people. Therefore, white people are obligated to dismantle it. During the protests after the Attorney General decided to not indict the cops who killed Breonna Taylor, the First Unitarian Church of Louisville opened their doors to keep protesters safe from police after an imposed curfew. Reverend Lori Kyle, who did most of her ministry in Canada, was one of the leaders on the front lines. It was one of the leaders as the church became a pivotal hub for protesters and was a saving grace for those on the front lines. The church was criticized and under heavy surveillance, but they kept providing support every night. This was not intended to diversify their church, but do their part to dismantle racism. I am sure that many congregants at First Louisville were uneasy about involving their church in the chaos and police violence of the protests. But as one congregant professed, every time we give a bottle of water to someone, God is there. Every time we offer comfort, God is there. End quote. We may not find God in anti-racism work, but we can find inspiration, love, and spiritual depth that will dismantle racist systems and create positive change. Building external relationships. UUs can put the eighth principle into action by engaging with individuals and groups external to ourselves. It is important that, like First Church of Louisville, we support the movement with more than just words and prayer. As prominent Black UU Ken Wiley argued, quote, protests need food and water. Movements cost money, events need set up and take down help, and meetings need physical spaces, end quote. Many of our congregations have access to space, money, and networks of people that we can use to support those fighting for racial justice. However, support is impossible without engagement. The reality is that organizationally, Unitarians do not have a relationship to today's struggle for racial justice in Canada. It hurts me when I connect with activists and organizers who have worked with the United Church or Anglican Church, but don't even know what Unitarians are. There are many UUs and UU groups that are engaged, and I'm happy about that. But much of our collective action has been unreliable and misplaced. While we sat and debated the eighth principle, Black youth took to the streets to defund the police. While we were worried about procedure, Indigenous land defenders used their bodies to stop the destruction of old growth trees. Some congregations were wordsmithing, while unhoused people were being violently evicted from their homes and encampments. I valued the discussion on the eighth principle and was pleased to be a part of it. It was a big step for Canadian UUs, and it did require discussion. However, we have fallen behind. Now that the eighth principle has passed, it is time to catch up. Unitarians, especially white Unitarians who are not involved in this movement for racial justice, should approach their engagement as humble followers. After attending the protest in Ferguson following the murder of Mike Brown, interfaith pastor and civil rights activist Reverend Osajifu Sekou said in an interview, quote, the leadership that is emerging are the folks who have been in the streets, who have been tear gassed. The leadership is Black, poor, queer, women. It presents in a different way. I am not a leader in this movement. I am a follower. I take my orders from 23-year-old queer women, end quote. I am proud that many UUs are leaders in movements for climate justice, LGBTQ rights, and for the rights of folks living with disabilities, or were involved in the civil rights movement. We need your experience, support, and presence. What we require now is that you let us lead in this fight for racial justice, that you trust us and our vision for a just world. Reconciling with internal racism. In order to move forward in this struggle, we must reconcile with our past. As I give talks to many congregations about anti-racism, there seems to be a sentiment that UUs have been simply not doing the work and now need to get re-involved. As I stated earlier, for the most part, I agree with that. Many UUs have good intentions and progressive ideals. I am affirmed by the white allies doing the work to educate themselves, urging others to take action, and supporting the movement in any way they can. Folks are at different stages, and that is fine, as long as we are working together for a common goal. However, Through my talks, I was also exposed to small pockets of Unitarians whose racist ideals and actions take up space in our congregations. How can we as a faith move forward in dismantling racism without directly addressing our racist systems and actions? One does not need to go deep in the archives of UU history to find moments of racism and white supremacy. You need only ask racialized people or reflect on the recent eighth principle process. The eighth principle started many insightful conversations, inspired people to act, and changed minds. There are still those who remain opposed for numerous reasons. The disruptive tactics during the special meeting in November and the online response after the principle was passed made clear that there is still a loud minority that covers their racism with nice words, diversions, and concerns about timing. Throughout the eighth principle process, many harmful sentiments were shared by Unitarians. In the Dismantling Racism Study Group survey, scary remarks were given, such as, quote, "While working with new cultures coming to our area, do not forget that we were here first, and our lives matter as well. We have welcomed others and helped them with a hand out as well as a hand up, but at the displacement of our core traditions." End quote. This opinion is certainly extreme, but it is not uncommon. Many UUs have expressed this sentiment to me as well. Maybe not with such intense language, but still the same sentiment that discussions on racism and racialized people were taking up too much space. My hope is that those individuals have grown and educated themselves. But I also suspect and know that many have not and will not budge. It is important in any major decision in any organization for there to be differing opinions. But what is scary to me is how defiant the detractors are. Their opinions may seem civil and harmless. I can understand why many Unitarians would want to believe that. Although there is certainly no consensus amongst racialized Unitarians, one thing we can agree on is that their rhetoric and tactics are harmful. For example, after the CUC announced the passing of the eighth principle, an email was sent to the CUC leaders warning them of moving in a critical race theory direction. This is a racist dog whistle that plays into conservative fears and the need to keep history white friendly. It may be just a debate or discussion for y'all, but for us, it's a fight to have our existence respected. I need to make this clear. The eighth principle was not some idea hastily adopted from the UUA. After recognizing our congregations had the same issues as south of the border, racialized Canadian UUs organized to directly ask for the eighth principle to be adopted. I have watched as racialized UUs gave passionate and eloquent testimonies on the eighth principle based in data and lived experience, only to be ignored or discredited. To the individuals that stand opposed to the eighth principle, even the ones who reluctantly voted for it in November, but consistently voiced their discontent, it is not about you. It is about the peoples whose ancestors forced labor and removal allowed for this faith to grow. It is about the people who were abandoned by the UUA in the 1970s. It is about the Black, Indigenous, and racialized people who have tolerated relentless racism and resisted leaving after every time someone made them feel unwelcome and tokenized. Many of our fellow congregants understand or learned this through the eighth principle process. So what is holding those people back? Racialized people have been patient. We have been understanding, but we cannot tolerate more feet dragging and harm. I am aware that some may have concerns about directly addressing the racism in our faith. It stokes fears of cancel culture and divisiveness. Okay. Truthfully, it is hard to share a faith with the numerous UUs who have harassed my father through emails. It is hard to share a room, digital or otherwise, with people I know will consistently attack me without ever really listening to what I am saying. I know church, particularly the Unitarian Church, to be a place to learn, grow, and heal. But that can't be at the expense of racialized people. Every incident is different and situated in a different context. It requires a gracious and nuanced approach, but it still needs to be addressed for what it is, racism, so that it does not happen again and again and again. Only after we call a moment or action racist can we then begin to assess and heal. It is an exciting time to be a young Black Unitarian. 2 years ago, I could never have imagined that I would feel that way. It is an exciting time to be a Canadian UU, period. We have just begun the journey to dismantle racism and white supremacy, to make our congregations truly safe and inclusive places, to meet new and inspiring people that can lead us. The fight for the eighth principle has been tough, but it has also been exhilarating. Watching people's minds change and connecting with committed UUs has been spiritually awakening. There are some who don't know which way the wind is blowing and will fight to undermine the great work. But as my precursors proclaimed, I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking and keep on talking. Let us keep walking, talking, and living the eighth principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Donovan. Thank you so much. We'll have question and answer at the end of the service, so please stay with us so we'll have a chance to talk with Donovan.
Here's my song, Put One Foot in Front of the Other. And the verses are call and response. And here's how it goes. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other, and lead with love. I know you're scared, and I'm scared too, but here I am, right next to you. We gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. We gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with love. There you go. That's the song. I love you.
We have a reading from Your Life Matters by Ken Wiley. Kenny Wiley was a UU World Senior Editor from 2015 to 2018 and a core team member of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, Blue.
Guided by that enduring, unfulfilled promise of the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, ours is a faith that has said, or worked to say, to those who have been marginalized.
You are a woman and your life matters.
You are gay and lesbian and your life matters.
You are transgender and your life matters.
You are bisexual and your life matters.
You have a disability and your life matters.
You were not loved as a child and your life matters.
You struggle with depression and your life matters.
Right now, we are being called by our ancestors, by our principals, by young Black activists across the country to promote and affirm.
You are young and Black and your life matters.
You stole something and your life matters.
I have been taught to fear you and your life matters.
The police are releasing your criminal record and your life matters.
They are calling you a thug and your life matters.
Our ancestors, principals, and fellow humans are calling on us to promote, affirm with deeds and words, Black Lives Matter.
People say, what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see which must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and actions is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. We can stand up.
We can stand up.
Whew. Thank you, Donovan Hayden. Whew. All right.
Thank you, Donovan.
Now, we're going to have a bit of a Q&A, and we have a Q&A covenant. We accept that racism exists in Canada and in our UU congregations.
We will trust and respect the lived experience and authority of racialized people.
We will take time and space to internally reflect on feelings of resistance and discomfort before speaking. Defensive impulses are natural but do not need to be immediately expressed or acted upon.
We will ask questions to help us clarify or address a concern with the intention of learning instead of striving to be right or to protect ourselves.
We will not use this time to prove we are not racist, colorblind, or exceptional.
we can own and share our experiences about making mistakes in anti-racist work.
We will be accountable to recognizing harm, accepting feedback, and engaging in our own political education.
We will stay on topic rather than deflecting and filtering the topic of anti-racism through more familiar conversations. With that agreement, we're going to open up to the Q&A section, and there's some points from his talk here, if that would help help you remember some of your questions. Donovan?
Yeah, looks all good.
All right.
Look forward to your questions.
Do we raise our hand or to ask a question or just speak at?
Both. Zoe, you have her hand raised, so why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Donovan. I really appreciated that. And what really struck me was when you said that what racialized people really want is to lead and to have kind of support around that. And I think my question to you, and that was significant to me because it kind of turned the whole thing around for me in terms of thinking, okay, well, as Unitarians, people are liberal minded, but I think this is a new ask in the sense of saying, like, we want you to trust in our authority and our ability to lead and to listen to what we have to say about what's important versus you just being like, we are not racist or we're not racist. And so I appreciate that. And what I want clarity on is, what does it mean to be anti-racist versus just not racist? Like, what is the anti-piece?
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate. I'm glad that part resonated. Yeah, and I think one important part with that is that for me, it isn't necessarily about like letting all racialized folks lead, just because some folks, and I know that I've been that person, just want to be able to step back and relax and live their life. But the folks who have taken that, like myself, who have taken that thing and letting, especially like younger folks, especially like queer folks who usually are frankly just kind of said, I don't like the way you present, I don't like your tone, and you need to be quiet because I know best. That's a thing that happens too often. So yeah, that's kind of what I meant by that, and I'm glad that resonated. In terms of anti-racist to not racist, yeah, I mean, a lot of it, this term anti-racist was, made so big with Ibram X. Kendi's book. That's, if you want to kind of learn more about it or go more in depth, that's definitely the type of stuff to look into. But for me, what it is I think the problem with the idea of like, oh, I'm just going to not be racist, that doesn't really do anything for me, and that doesn't really do anything for racialized folks, because that means, great, like, one, I'm a little skeptical of anyone just saying I'm just not going to be racist. But even if that were to be true, that doesn't. So what, does that then just leave racialized folks to fend for themselves against people who are going to cause them harm, against systems that are going to cause them harm? So the idea of being anti-racist is that I am going to not just leave you to the wolves. I am actually going to take accountability, take responsibility, and fight this system that you are going to have to deal with. And the fact is that all of us are dealing with, and all of us are touched by. I mean, I think of it like, I do a lot of my work with police, and that is very clear, who's getting targeted, who's not. But even issues of climate justice, right? The reality, and especially where y'all are at, a lot of people don't care about climate because it's mostly indigenous folks who are getting affected by it. And so these are issues that are right now that are getting affected by it, in terms of losing land, flooding, and heat. So that's what it means to me, is that not racist kind of shirks all of that responsibility and lets the next person get it. the next person is usually me or someone who looks like me. But yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you. So instead of just being passive, like taking an active role in fighting whatever racist structures you choose to fight.
Yeah, and I think, and it's important too with that, is that I learned this metaphor about racial justice with like a moving sidewalk. You know, like if folks are still flying again, you know, I have been, because I live in 2 countries essentially, but you know, the little moving sidewalks on in the airport, that to me is how this goes. And that, you know, that there's a moving sidewalk. We have these systems in place, capitalism, racism, whatever ism, and it is moving us along. And we have folks who are walking along on that moving sidewalk, getting to that place of, you know, of white supremacy, of just inequality. You know, we know those folks. They're, you know, we say Donald Trump is the perfect example, sure. But there's also folks who are just standing, and that's that passivity you're talking about. Like, you know, I'm not going to walk towards it, but I'm just going to stand. I'm not going to do anything. But even by standing, you are still moving. So the thing to me, anti-racist, is just turning around and starting to walk against the sidewalk. Because even saying I'm not going to do anything, because of the systems that we have built in this country and in this world, you still are going to be moving towards an end that I don't think benefits most of us, or really any of us.
Can I ask a question then? You mentioned in your presentation something called critical race theory, and I'm trying to understand what it is and why is it such a big issue.
Yeah, so critical race theory really came out of like the legal world of just understanding how race, looking through law and understanding how race impacts all of law. It's something that, like, my father, he's a professor, has been talking about critical race theory since I was like a boy, right? Like it's been around in a lot of circles. And then and teachers even have been using it, and then all of a sudden, the right wing jumped on it and said, hey, we can use this term as a way to rally our people to defend against teachers actually wanting to teach about slavery, or actually wanting to teach about Indigenous genocide. We can rally behind this, and it's an easy term that can help people get away with being racist. And so critical race theory, to me, and what it actually is just understanding that is incorporating the understanding that race has affected so many of our systems, if not all of our systems in this country, and just giving a very truthful understanding of history and just any other type of thing you're learning about. But unfortunately, it's a term that's being ripped away, and without a critical lens on critical race theory, it's easy to get swept up on it, especially for a lot of white folks. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, there's teachers in the States, and I'm sure it's happening here, it's just probably not getting the coverage. People who just want to like literally talking about slavery of the simplest of things, and then having organized parents and stuff like that saying, you're teaching my kid critical race theory, you're going to make them hate themselves because they're white. And yeah, it's just it's not okay. And it's really, and I'm used to hearing that in certain spaces, but it's really startling when I hear it from someone in a Unitarian space. And then I also see a bunch of people follow up that email and say, yeah, you're right, critical race theory is ruining our faith. That is really scary to me.
Thank you.
Marvin?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Donovan. When you were citing the good white folks who talk about we were here first, so don't expect us to. My mind was going to the people among whom we live who really have the right to say that, who are Canada's First Nations people. And I think that one of the most important parts of anti-racism work, particularly with relation to Canada's First People, is one of reparations. And we haven't gone any way seriously facing that issue. You have any comment about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I support a lot of the Indigenous folks organizing to get their land back. I mean, like land back is not a metaphor. It's not something that we can just say and be, yeah, land back, yeah. I mean, like, no, it is a real thing, that it is the least that folks can do. And yeah, I know around here, I mean, I know up where y'all are at, it's happening in real time, and it also is down here. It's a camp that was set up by the Haudenosaunee to stop land development. I remember I referenced it in my last talk, but there was this development of houses that were going to be built on their land and right up pushing up against the reservation, and they said no, that's not okay. And you know, you talk to these folks and the indigenous leaders, and they were just like, yo, like we get, like, you know, it was kind of like we may not be able to get, you know, all the land back or whatever, and we do want to find a way to live peacefully, but we need to draw a line somewhere. This is going to be the line. So yeah, no, I think, yeah, I agree with it. It's time. And if we really are serious, and all these hashtags and orange shirts, if we're really serious, we would take that seriously too.
Hi, Donovan, it's Barbara. I'm reading a book now that I finally got my hands on, called My Grandmother's Hands, Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies. It's by Resmaa Menakem, who is a Black author. Says, it's talking about how we internalize racism, not only the institutions, all the media portrayals and all that affects us and affects our minds, but it also affects our bodies. So we develop fear responses, we develop anxiety responses to traumas from the past, and we respond to stuff in the media the same way. And that, so when we start feeling, oh, I'm not racist, but you see something happening and you say, oh, if I see a black man walking down the street, am I going to walk to the other side of the street? Well, for me, you know, this is all personal for everybody. I'm going to walk to the other side of the street, whether it's a black man, a white man, you know, unless it's somebody I know, I'm just going to take some space. And that's partly fear. What's his last name? Where's Mr. Menakem? Mr. Menakem is saying is that it takes a long time, that our responses to things that have been ingrained in us by history, by institutions, and by the media have been ingrained. We aren't necessarily aware of them. There's a lot of unconscious stuff that happens, and that when something triggers that, it happens, you know, very rapidly. You have a response to it that's coming from your, you know, your reptilian brain, right? The I need to protect myself brain. And that in order to overcome that, we have to become aware of how we feel in our bodies and say, what am I responding to, and where could this be coming from? And to take it slowly, you know. So it relates to not getting defensive when things come up. You know, we ask in the covenant not to get defensive. And I think that's when, you know, you're triggered by something and you realize, whoa, that came up fast. Where did that come from? We have to become more aware of it, because I understand and have been there, you know, saying, oh, I'm not racist, and then find myself having responses to things that I think, where did that come from? And so what's your response? How do you feel that education and self-awareness of feelings fits into things as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I think it's important to clarify too is that in that covenant, like, it's actually not that we shouldn't be defensive. Like no, like I am not in the right. I don't think any of us are in the right to tell any of us like how we should feel or how we should respond, right? Yeah, I hear things all the time, and I'm like, nope, not me. Especially, you know, things around like gender equity and like and around things around queer folks. I'm like, nope, not me. I'm a good guy. We're good. The key part is, yeah, like we get defensive. Like it happens. It's cool. The issue is, and I've seen this in many circles, is this need to then, instead of just sitting and just thinking about it for like all of 30 seconds, we immediately jump down that person's throat and start fighting them. Right? And I think it's and so, you know, I think it's being okay with just like not getting it right and just and having those feelings, you know, it's so important to this work, because then that's when you can actually just take a breath, breathe, and kind of like you're saying, and actually just like reflect on it and be like, why am I so upset at like this Black person speaking to me in this tone? Is it because they're actually a threat, or because I would rather them just shut up? and if sometimes, honestly, if half the people who I've had confrontations with did that, my life would be so much easier. and so that's the kind of the part of it. No, I think folks are entitled to feel and what they need here. And I think it gets into a dangerous zone of the psychology that I just may work and may not. But I think of like James Baldwin saying, you know, I think there was he was doing that interview, and there was this white psychologist. I think he was a psychologist. Maybe not, let me not speak on something I don't fully know, but he was definitely academic, and he was saying, well, like, hey, like things have changed, things are good. Like, don't you think, like, you know, white people, essentially you're saying white people no longer want to like kill Black people. So like, don't you think that's good? In their heads. And James Baldwin's like, no, like I don't care what you say and what you think. I judge you by what you do. And what you do is not let my kids learn with you. What you do is send cops to harass my neighborhoods. And so, yeah, when I get into this thing of like, oh, how I'm feeling or the feelings, like I got really no concerns. My concern is what is happening right here and how you're acting, because that's what really touches me. And that goes both ways, right? It goes ways with if I'm thinking progressive things, cool, awesome, but you've done nothing. So what does that do for the people who actually need help, and actually not need help, but also need to be empowered and need support? So yeah. But I do think, you know, sorry, answer the second part of your question, the education part. Yeah, I think it's important to learn this stuff, like I said, so that you can maybe get to a place where you're not having that triggered response of getting defensive. But the first step to doing that is just accepting that you were, and then getting more comfortable and more exposed to it. It's like, yeah, it's like exposure therapy, except not bad or traumatizing. But yeah, getting too much into my sociology degree now. But yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had another question. My other question is about words that evoke those kinds of response. And as white people, the two things that evoke a lot of response, even if you say, oh, I think I'm not racist, you know, I'm working to be anti-racist, we all have a response to white supremacy and white, what is that called? Sensitivity. What?
Fragility.
Fragility. Yeah, white fragility.
Yeah.
I just was wondering, what are your feelings about those two phrases and what we as white folks can do about them?
Yeah, I mean, one, I'm glad that I can like say white supremacy like now and not have people turn their head. Before George Floyd was killed, that was not the truth. It's really unfortunate that like a Black man getting killed in Minnesota is what then made Unitarians comfortable with the word white supremacy. And so for me though, I'm just glad I could just like say it and it's not like a thing. And I think that's important, that like folks are not, understand where these words come from, and just like dancing around it. It doesn't really get anywhere because it doesn't actually say what's happening. I mean, it's so important for that specificity of language. And also the reality is it's a term that racialized folks, Black folks, and especially, think more on the colonial side, Indigenous folks, that's the terms that we use and that we say, maybe more at the academic level, sure, but it's still coming from us. And so then it's like, well, why can't we say this when we're with our supposed white allies? And so, yeah, no, I'm just glad that I can say it and not have folks go, I don't like that term. Can we maybe call it something else? Yeah, it's like, no.
Thank you, Donovan. Anybody else? If we're missing your hands or something, let us know. Just speak up.
I just want to say thank you and showing up and doing, because that's what you do with us. You show up and you do. That is that is priceless. It's been a real pleasure working with you and getting this presentation together and giving you that time and space to say where we are right now. I think is going to we're going to learn a lot from you.
Yeah.
Christy.
Yeah, I didn't, well, I guess I had a question and I wanted to basically say what you just said. Is there any way, do you post or do you have a blog? Do you have anything within the Unitarian community that people can go to, so that like we don't have, that I know of, anyone of color other than white in our fellowship. And I mean, we have queer and we have that we can, like, I'm a lesbian myself. So I mean, I can go off of that, but I'm not Black. I'm not Indigenous. I'm not, you know, I don't have dark skin. That we can go to so that we can follow directives, or not directives, but
Yeah, I think I know, like I kind of referenced it before, the CUC has like a bunch of Unitarian and non-Unitarian like guides on like anti-racism and resources and stuff like that. It's like,
but are they laid out by people of color?
Oh,
are
yeah,
they laid
yeah,
out?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. They're all resources. They're all resources that are laid out by people of color, but they're also resources laid out by white people that are like, because it is important for white people to talk to white people as well on these things, you know, still being informed by racialized folks. But yeah, and I know like the stuff that I used for finding the readings for today, I found those, the UUA has like a Black Lives Worship page. And like all these things, it's literally just keyword Unitarian, right? So like if you want to learn about like white supremacy, Unitarian, racism, Unitarian, like, I mean, there's a lot of resources been put out in the last like 5 years that are really great stuff. And I'm always amazed. I read these things and I'm like, hey, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. and it's really great. And I'm thankful. And there's so many of them that I can't even look through all of them. I'm like, this is 3 pages. I can't read it. Like, there's a lot out there, and it's a joy, really, especially coming from like Unitarians and Canadian Unitarians too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So you had your hand up?
Oh, just wondering, you know, what do you think is the main thing that like the Black Lives Matter movement or whatever is like kind of focused on right now? Because I know like there's this huge backlash with critical race theory and like really in the United States, because I'm from Seattle, and so I'm real aware of all that. And so like, where is the movement focusing right now? I mean, that's kind of a broad question. I don't know if you can answer it, but like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can answer it. I can tell you that a lot of the work in Toronto has been around, of course, around the police, around defunding the police. That's a lot of the work that we're doing here. it's long work, it's hard work, but it's good work. Also around homelessness, that's a big thing in Toronto. Just, I think recognizing one, yes, like Black and Indigenous folks are make up like a disproportionate amount of homeless people in this city, but also just recognizing that the intersections that homelessness or the intersections of homelessness, right? So yes, it's race, it's also ability, it's also mental health, it's also gender and sexuality, and so that's kind of the two things that I know focused on a lot here. But yeah, I mean, it depends on each city. Each city has different things, right? I mean, like when I'm down in Pittsburgh, there's still a focus on police, but not defunding. Folks aren't quite there yet in Pittsburgh. It's still a lot of folks in communities for different reasons, and that's fine. Who still want to reform police, still want to make changes to the police, but find defund and abolition a little too much. And that's fine if it's coming from Black folks, because I'm like, yeah, y'all doing what y'all doing. But yeah, it depends on each city. I know in Pittsburgh, a lot of it is around like zoning, like housing, like where people are living. And so it depends on each city. And I think that's why it's so important to focus locally and as grassroots as you can, because where you are is impact, and then also who's saying what the issue is. It's because a lot of the organizations that maybe we're a little more familiar with, that have nonprofit status, that have nice, clean websites, may not be actually the ones who are doing the work on the ground to make the most structural change. And we've seen that here in Toronto with a lot of organizations who are Black led, but are still wanting a piece of this, the capitalist project, of the corporate project that we don't really want that much of a piece of. Yeah, we still got bills to pay, don't get me wrong, but not trying to be billionaires. So yeah. And I know in Vancouver, or not, I know in Vancouver, but like they have a Black Lives chapter. I know, and I've done my research in terms of understanding that Vancouver Island and Comox Valley are not Vancouver, and so much love to y'all. And see, I had to unlearn my Toronto bias. But I do know that that, and I'm sure that would be a cool place to start, because they have a lot of stuff, and I've seen their work, and they're doing a lot of great work. It's Black Lives Matter Vancouver. From what I see, they do a lot of real grassroots stuff that I frankly wish Black Lives Matter Toronto did. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Yeah, so I think that may be a good place to maybe learn about closer organizations.
Okay, we are at the 20-minute mark for question and answer. Maybe we have time for one more if anyone has one.
Well, thank you so much, Donovan. Is that a hand?
That's a hand, Louie.
Uh-oh. Last question. Finish us up.
Well, it's not a question. I was just aghast the other day. A friend I never thought would hear this from said something about a Chinaman. I went, I haven't heard that word since looking at something on a knowledge network or whatever. So anyway, yeah, shit's out there that you don't realize that could come from somebody. Anyway, that was just my comment.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, it's out there, but we're not alone, which is good. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Donovan, for
wonderful
being with us again.
Thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So much.
It's crazy. I give these in the morning all the time, and then now I'm like, wow, it's 8 o'clock. So switch it up. Hey, I got to sleep in this morning, so thank you for that.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
I know.
Bye-bye.